We said so many things that it's hard to say a summary. And so let's go into one of the issues that you were waiting for a long time. And one of the major problems that we have in discussing neshamot or in understanding life is what we perceive as injustices in the world. And this is always the biggest challenge that we have. Good people that suffer. Tzaddik v'ra'al. A person is a tzaddik, and yet with all the mitzvot and everything that the person does, things do not go well for that person. People that come and go in this world, people that are ill, all these young children that suffer, that die, all these things are very challenging to to the mind of the person. And it's really the things that shake the foundation of our emunah, because people actually, when they see events like that, their mind takes them to all the wrong places, right? And this has been always from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu to teach him how it could be that there is tzaddik v'ra'lo, and Rasha v'tovlo. You have a Rasha that does wonderfully, and the tzaddik that suffers so much. So there is no question that takes us into the world of Gilgulim. The belief that we Jews have that a neshama is the very essence of a person, that the neshama is what counts. The body that carries this neshama is no more than the clothing, a physical clothing to the neshama. It's no more than this jacket represents me. You could wear it anywhere. Anybody can wear it. It's not me. Me is the essence of me. The same way the neshama is the essence of man, and the body is very insignificant in relation to the neshama, and does not have to in any way be limited to that one body. The neshama being an entity of its own in its level of kedusha and in its spiritual nature of what the neshama is, it has to fulfill itself in this world. And the neshama is brought down to the world for the first time. And the neshama is challenged in the physical world, as we know, to be able to remain spiritual to the maximum. The challenges are every second of the day. One cannot even say they're daily, they're practically every second of the day. And some neshamot will actually fulfill their lives in the first coming to this world. And when they leave the world, they would have fulfilled their mission. And then they go to the world. A lot of the neshamot are going to come to this world. And because of the challenge being so difficult, and the opportunities for failure so available, man is vulnerable to everything that is about him, and many will not fulfill their mission in this world. At which time, when life is over, you find that this neshama is unfulfilled. You find that this neshama has not in any way gotten where it should have been. And it needs it needs to continue. It needs to come back either for correction, either to finish unfinished work, but there is a need for the neshama to come back to this world. Now, I think it would be wonderful, perhaps, or at least would give us a certain understanding, if the neshama came back in the same body. So somebody would have told us, my grandfather would have told me, I knew Mr. So-and-so, who was my friend. And now this Mr. So-and-so with the same body is also my friend, the grandchild. Because he lived in that generation, and he lived in this generation, and maybe with the stories that my grandfather told me, and what I see, I can make sense of the life of this person. But being that the body is not connected to the neshama, that's not how it happens. The person, this neshama, comes back, and for today we'll only speak about coming back to a different body. Obviously, we know that the neshama can come back in many other shapes and forms, but the neshama comes down to a different body. And I have no relation to that body, and even in today's world, which we could have a record of our generation with pictures, with history about every single person in the world. It doesn't help me 5 generations down the line because the body will be different. The person that I'm dealing with, I would not recognize as the person that lived many years ago. So we are challenged by the fact that we see a person here and we don't know his past. We don't know where this person came from. We don't know what purpose this person has in this world. We don't know our own purpose, why we're here and how we're here and where we were before in a previous life. Were we part of a previous life? Are we here for correction? Are we here to finish a job? Are we here for a small detail as whatever time we have? You will see that sometimes for a tiny detail, the person comes back to this world and there's an entire life that takes place. Sometimes it's a very short life. So you see that all this is part of the challenge in our belief. So much so that Chida writes about one of the great Rachamim, Rabbi Modina, that was his name, who did not believe in the concept of Kippur, in the concept of coming back to this world, in reincarnation, for a different life. He didn't believe it. He thought, he was a great Chacham, but he thought, you come to this world, you got yourself one chance, you do what you do, and then the corrections happen in the world to come over there. That's why there is a Gan Eden, there is a Gehinnom, which is true, by the way. There is corrections that do not require coming back to this world. There is jobs that are finished, and for the small details that there was failure, it can be fixed, at home, up there, without having to leave. So he was of that belief. Hashem had a plan for him that his neighbor had a child, and a month after the child was born, the child became extremely ill. And he was sick for 6 months until the child was about to die. And the mother came to Rabbi Yehuda and asked him to please come and do the rituals that we have for when a person is passing away. There was some learning of Torah at the time, Kriyat Shema, as we know, and so on. And Rabbi Yehuda came and he sat next to this baby. And in the process of him reading aloud whatever he was reading, the baby screamed out, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. A baby that never spoke. Yeah, he was a baby. He had never spoken. This the Rav Chida brings this as a fact. Yeah, nobody ever taught him Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Yeah, and from that day on, he was quite shaken, and he accepted that he was wrong for believing that there is no concept of coming back uh, in Gilgul. So we do believe that neshamot come back. We do believe that everything that we see and perceive as injustice is just to the smallest detail. There is nothing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does that is not just. We come in the middle of the movie. We don't know what happened at the beginning, and we don't know what will be the end. Our vision is limited to the period of time that we exist. While the neshama exists much longer, right, before and after, and we're only privy of a small portion. We're only privy of a small segment of the history of that neshama. If somebody were to come and tell us, show us the movie from the beginning, things would make a lot of sense. Things would make a lot of sense. And we would understand to what level these things go. So we could talk. What I'm going to do is give you some events that are recorded by great Chachamim. So there's no question about the veracity of these events. They're true. It's not, and by the way, it's not today, it's not something that we alone believe. I think the world believes in the concept of reincarnation. It's unlimited to Jews alone. Today, I think everybody is quite clear in the fact that this has happened. For example, in hypnosis, they see it all the time. They see it all the time. What we know as a fact, they will take somebody, put them down under hypnosis, and the person will tell you stories of a previous life that are fascinating. The person will speak the language that the person spoke in the previous life, a language that is totally unknown to this person. And yet all of a sudden, under hypnosis, the person will start speaking Chinese when he has no idea one word. He knows it. Like he never had contact with that language. Under hypnosis, when you reach into the neshama of the person, you go above the body, and there's no limitations of space and place. So the neshama is the neshama. The neshama has a history, and the neshama will speak of its language, will describe details, historical details that they lived. They will describe places that when they went to check, the smallest detail, the nail on the wall was there, to describe places where they grew up. It's fascinating that what they can do through hypnosis. And this is for us, it's a davar pashut, it's a simple thing, that we all have a very large reservoir of history of a previous life or previous lives that we carry with us all the time. They can prove it today through the science of hypnosis, to other types of whatever sciences they have, they can prove a lot. For us, it's very simple. We accept it. We accept it from day one, by the way. The Zohar says, why is Adam called Adam? Yeah, with everything that we know, Adamah, all the wonderful things. Yeah? That it comes from the Adamah, it's called Adam. That's very simple. But they tell us, the Chachamim, that Adam is the Neshama came into Adam. The Neshama returned into David HaMelech, the Dalit, and the Neshama will return into Mashiach. So that Neshama of Adam that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created is Aleph, Dalet, Mem. Yes, it comes from Adamah. But you know what? There is another word for Adamah. Eretz is also. And he's not called whatever, a derivative of Eretz. Right? And you can find other words, Afar, whatever. Maybe Hashem created him from Afar. He could have been the derivative of the letters Ayin Peresh. That's not what you find. You find Aleph, Dalet, Mem. And there is a million reasons why that's the name of Adam. But in the Olam of Gilgul, it's the sequence of that neshama. Adam, David, Mashiach. That neshama. So from day one, we know that the neshamot are coming and returning, and when we go into heaven, that's Moshe Rabbeinu, like Sefer HaGilgulim is on its own, a lifetime study. But today science recognizes it at some level that this is true. There was a time where there was a big famine, and there was a drought. No rain came down. And the Chachamim prayed and prayed, and there was no way to break down the famine. And as I mentioned, one of the Shabbatot in the Shiurim, when we speak about famine, we speak about people dying. It's not like today. If there is no rain, sometimes we think we're happy, there's no rain. Or we're always complaining we have a lot of rain, because it really doesn't make a big difference in our lives. So at that time, it was either you had what to eat or you didn't have what to eat. There was no way else. So they went to the great Chachamim and they told them, listen, we prayed, we all prayed, nothing is happening. So one of the great Chachamim told them there is one person whose tefillah can still work. If all our tefillah didn't work, there's one person whose tefillah can still work. He lives far from here in a very distant village. Yeah, go and look for him. And they sent a delegation to go and travel to this man, and they gave him the name of the person. Told him go to that village, whatever, and ask for Mr. So and so. Yeah, Yitzhak ben Abraham, whatever his name is. Yeah. All right. They went. They traveled. They arrived to that village. They asked about this Yitzhak ben Abraham. So at the end, talking to the people in the city, there's the only Yitzhak ben Abraham that we have is somebody who lives in a hut, and he's drunk the whole day. Drunk the whole day. He's drunk the whole day. He says, yeah, he's a very weird person. Yeah. He wakes up in the morning. He puts on his talit, his tefillin. He says tefillah till hodu. And that hodu, which is hardly the beginning of tefillah, some congregations actually begin shachrit from hodu. Yeah. He takes off his talit, his tefillin, and he drinks and he sleeps the whole day. So, we came, the Chachamim sent us to him, to him. From all people, he doesn't even pray. You're telling. So they told him, there's a drought. He's going. How is he going to pray? What is he going to pray? He hasn't said the shachrit in his life. He's going to pray for rain when all the Chachamim couldn't do it. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But they told him it's worse. Whenever you will go, he's drunk. You can't even speak to him. So, what do? They said, you know what, we have to go and get him at the moment when he finishes his many concise tefillah, and get him right at hodu, before when he takes off his talit at tefillin, before he drinks, the moment he drinks, he's done. So that's what he did. They went and they got him at the time that he was taking off his tefillin, and they told him, listen, the world is in tzar, the Chachamim sent us to you to pray, and he said, leave me alone. No. Okay, you can imagine what the conversation was like. You must, you this, the other. At the end, he was so pressed that he actually, for a moment, prayed that there should be rain. immediately he took his big glass of mahya and he went to sleep, and rain started pouring nonstop. So these young rabbis were gone, and they were talking stories. The people of the city, of the town, whatever the city, they were like, how, what? So they went back home, and they insisted to speak to the Chachamim. You have to tell us what this is all about. I mean, a person who doesn't pray, he can just say a prayer in the split of a second, and the heavens open up after years of drought. Yeah. So they told him like this. This man was a great tzaddik in the previous generation. He kept every mitzvah in the Torah. He learned day and night. A tzaddik like very few. This is the neshama that we're talking about. Remember, we're talking about the neshama. It's not important what the body is. He made one mistake in his life. That he used to pray at the beginning of Shachrit, from Vayahar that we start until Wudu, without talit and tefillin. He only put on talit and tefillin at Wudu for the rest of it, in the previous life. So he went up to heaven after he died, and they saw a tzaddik that could get the best place in Olam. But as we have the mitzvot that stand up in our favor, the malachim that we create through the mitzvot, every mitzvah that we do, we create a malach, and that malach stands up in our favor. Unfortunately, every averah that we do, we also create a malach that becomes a prosecutor against us. So one of the malachim stood up and said, hold on, you're going to give him the best place in Gan Eden? This man, he used to pray till Hudu without talit and tefillin. How could you do that? It's not fair. So they decided, the Din Shemala decided that he has to come down to this world to fix what he the mistake. So he was such a tzaddik that he started crying, and he said, "You send me back to this world to fix something that really it's not such an averah, like I said, some congregations begin with Hudu, like it sounds like but you're making me vulnerable to a million other averot. I had to go now to this world to a life that I'm going to be challenged with an entire life. This is not about, so I'll fix the problem of Talit and Tefillin for Hudu. But then what? Then I have to struggle my whole life against all the temptations of the world. So I'm now, a good neshama that is almost fulfilled, that has a flaw. Now you're going to send me, and I end up coming with several flaws, the worse than what I was. So it can't be that after all my efforts in the previous life, I should be challenged in such a way. You have to send me in a way that I fix what I fix, but I don't destroy what I already built. So that's why they decided in heaven that he has to come to this world to say Shachrit from the beginning till Hudu with Talit and Tefillin, and to sleep and get drunk to sleep so he cannot sin any other sins. That's why he was a tzaddik, and Neshama of a tzaddik that they knew. You look at him, he's a drunkard. You look at him, he's the last person that you're going to go to ask that he should pray for you. You need somebody to pray for him. You understand? But that's the difference, whether it's a Neshama that has a history, or it's a Neshama that just came. If it is a Neshama that just came, so surely, well, what do you expect from something like that? If it is a Neshama that was here before and had the zechut, this is a big zechut that the Neshama had, that was able to come to this world and not to be challenged by the temptations of the world. It's a big chesed truth is, Rabbi Yaakov Abu Hatzira, had a son. Rabbi Yitzhak Abu Hatzira was like that. But he used to learn, he used to pray, he didn't have all this, but he had this thing that he needed to drink. And for whatever reason it was. And he was one of the biggest Mekubalim in the family. He was, he was a child. He was a child. And they wanted to do Birkat Levana, and there was no way, it was the last night, and there was no way that the sky was covered. Rabbi Yaakov was, to miss the Birkat Levana 1 month is a terrible thing. Yeah, and so he said, call it small Yitzhak here. They called it small Yitzhak, and Rabbi Yaakov asked, well, what do you think of this, that we're not going to do Birkat Levana? The Levana is hiding. The Levana is hiding. He started screaming, Levana, this is what you do for my father? This is what you do for my father? You cover yourself? Come out right now. The kid. And the Levana came out. This is when he was a child. You understand? Now, we don't understand. We don't understand. And that's the key. The key is that here must seem like this because there were big Rabbanim, big Mekubalim that were able, they had Ruach HaKodesh, and they were able to see what Neshama was connected to. The Arizal was an expert. The Arizal looked at any person in the world, he was able to say all the Gilgulim of the Neshama, where it was, who had the Neshama before, who had it after, you understand? Otherwise, we don't know. Otherwise, we have no idea of what goes on in front of us. And we see things that are mind-boggling and scary in life. And yet, a similar event happened also with the Baal Shem Tov, of a woman that couldn't have children. She came to the Baal Shem Tov for a bracha. She got a bracha. She had a child 9 months after. Everything good. At the age of 2, when he was no longer nursing, the mother was able to travel to the Baal Shem Tov and to have him bless the child that came as a miracle, through a blessing. And he gave her the greatest blessing. She came back home, the happiest woman in the world, years without children, a child, being able to go to the biggest tzaddik of the generation and get berachot and this, wonderful. As soon as she got home, the baby died. So she went back screaming to the Baal Shem Tov, what did you do? What did you do? Why take me through this? I don't have children. Then you come, you give me a beracha to have children, and I'm the happiest person. Then I come to strengthen the beracha, and you give me a beracha that made me believe that this child is going to have the most successful life in the world, and you come and you bless him, and now he's taken away like that. So the Baal Shem Tov told her, let me tell you who your child was. There was a Gentile king that couldn't have children. And he asked one of his close friends and advisors, what should I do? We need the Jews to pray. Whatever. In his religion, he ran out of prayers already. He asked everybody that he could have. So he wanted the Jews to pray. So his advisor told him, you know what, with the Jews, it doesn't work. Don't go and just tell them to pray for you. If you want the Jews to pray for you, tell them and give them an ultimatum. Either I have a child in the next few months, or I kill you all, and that is true. That's the only way that the Jews get together to turn over the world for somebody. So that's what happened. There were obviously the Jews out of totally, besides themselves. Well, what are they going to do? What powers do they have? In heaven, they had Rahmanut on the Jews that were going to die, and there was a neshama in heaven that said, I'm ready to go down and be the neshama for this, for a child for this king. So the king had a child, and he was really a genius. I think, obviously, now that we know where the neshama came from, we understand. But this was a neshama that absorbed everything, that understood everything, and he ran out of teachers. Where people came, told him, he ran out of teachers. Whatever they did, the child was bored, was this, he knew, he understood, this. He complained to the father, find me something else. I can't maybe the priest can teach me. Maybe there's something else to learn that I haven't learned. So the king called the priest, and the priest came and accepted to teach the son. He told him, however, I have a condition. The priest said to the king, there are 2 hours of the day that I cannot be disturbed. The child, your son cannot come and ask questions at that time. Those 2 hours are mine. And if you want me to teach him properly, and you want me to teach him all that there is to teach him, you have to respect the fact that I need those 2 hours to myself. So the young boy started learning with the priest, and it was fascinating. For the first time, he found something that was attractive, that kept his attention. But being the inquisitive child that he was, he could not take the fact that the priest hid for 2 hours. It bothered him. It got into his head that he has to find out what he does during those 2 hours. Just to insist that 2 hours you don't bother him. I mean, and with such, like inflexibility. It's not like there's no day, there's no time, it's never you can bother me. So slowly he started trying to find ways out to this, until one day he was able to open the door and get into the room where the priest is during those 2 hours. And lo and behold, what's the priest doing? He's wearing talit and tefillin, and he has a sefer in front of him. So the young child looks at him and says, a priest that is Jewish, yeah, because the priest had taught him through the process, yeah. So he told him that was my secret. That's why I did not allow you to come in during those 2 hours. Those are my 2 hours that I devote to God, and nobody knows that I'm Jewish. But those are the hours that I pray and I learn. And the child was so fascinated that he promised him he would never say anything to anybody. And he started learning Torah with the priest. Now this is a true story. Yeah? This is the Ruach HaKodesh. He started learning Torah with the priest, and the more Torah he learned, the more fascinated he was. And he told the priest, I have to convert to Judaism. So the priest told him, you want your father to have my head, your head, go and tell your father that you want to convert to Judaism. He doesn't even know that I'm Jewish. Yeah. So back and forth at the end, he told me, go to your father and tell him that you want to go out to the world to learn about the world. It's wonderful to learn in theory with books, with teachers, but there's a real life out there that you want to sense, you want to go and be able to see what's happening. So he went, it took months and months, and then the father said, no way, the only child, years he didn't have a child, he's the one who's going to inherit the whole kingdom. You let him go like that, but the child was persistent until the father let him go, and he actually went and to a far city, and he converted to Judaism, and he kept Torah and mitzvot to the smallest detail. He did not stop learning Torah for a moment from that day on. His child became an adult, and an adult became an old man, and he died. He went up to heaven. One of the greatest tzaddikim that ever came. One of the greatest tzaddikim that ever came. Because here he's a prince of another religion. And to take the road that he took and get where it takes, and to be so careful with every mitzvah and everything that he does, was something out of this world. So everybody, all the malachim, like we said, all the mitzvot, every word of Torah is a mitzvah, every word of Torah that the person reads is a malach. Can you imagine? You sit, you learn 50 years, until the one prosecutor stands up and says, all is wonderful. But this boy nursed for 2 years from a non-Jewish mother. And the whole basis of his nurturing as a child was from the Tum'ah. And you think that now, because the rest of his life he was good, you're going to do away with the fact that is like the nursing of the first 2 years is the basis, foundation for living. So the Shamayim, they decreed that he has to come down to this world for 2 years to nurse from a tzaddik, so the neshama can be fully completed. Hashem told the Kadosh Baruch Hu chose you to be the mother who will nurse him, to erase the nursing of the 2 years of Tumah. You nursed him for 2 years of Kedusha. And yes, he was taken away from you, but understand what you're talking about. You understand that this was a great neshama that was going back now with all the purity that any neshama could ever come to this world for, knowing that even the nursing that was not holy has been replaced now by your efforts. And certainly that gave a lot of nechama, a lot of comfort to the mother, who now you see it from the outside without understanding, then the whole thing is pretty much criminal in our eyes. How could that happen? How could, really, it's the most cruel thing, a barren woman, to promise her a child, and she should have a child, and she died 2 years after. Like, really, it's better not to have the child, there's no question. It's better to continue with the one pain than to have a worse pain. But when the tzaddikim were able to see what the neshama was, the origin of the neshama was, where it came, and the truth is, one of the tzaddikim had a talmid that was a little bit shaky in this issue, and he wanted to teach him a lesson. He told him, I want you to go to a village not far from here, and you will see a big tree with nice shade. I want you to stand away from the tree, but stay in a position that you have full vision of the tree. Go and see. There's a lot that you're going to learn from this experience. Go see and come back. So he goes, he sits far, and he has the tree in front of him. From far, nobody sees it. And a good, well-dressed man comes by. And he sits down under the tree and takes water from some small brook that there was there. And after resting a little bit, he got up and he left. All right. I mean, the excitement that he was looking for didn't happen, right? Okay, he came, he sat. But lo and behold, he sees that when he walked away, he sees that he forgot his wallet by the tree. His wallet had fallen by the tree. Okay. So he has to wait to see the next move. Another person passes by. He doesn't even care so much for the tree. He cares for the wallet. He sees there's a wallet there. He takes the wallet, he puts it in his pocket, and he continues. The next scene is a third person. From the looks of him, you saw that he was extremely poor. He lived in poverty, the way he was dressed, the way he conducted himself. He came and he sat under the tree and he drank some of the water, just waiting to cool off from the heat of the day. And he falls asleep. He falls asleep. Now, this young rabbi is watching all of a sudden he sees gentleman number one coming back. And he's coming back to look for his wallet. He realized he lost his wallet. He's coming back to this. He sees this beggar lying down on the floor there. He tells him, "Give me my wallet." He says, "What's wrong?" He says, "I dropped my wallet here when I was resting. And you're here, so you took it." So back and forth, I don't know of any wallet. I didn't take any wallet. Back and forth. The rich man, or the wallet man, gets angry at him and gives him a beating. He says, "You know what, you can keep the wallet. But at least, you'll get a good." He beats him up terribly. So the Talmid goes back home and he says, "Okay, now what happened?" He tells the Chacham, "You see, life is unfair. This guy didn't take the wallet. I mean, he got the biggest beating in his life. The other guy, he just passed by for a minute. He took the wallet on him. So everything is injustice. The guy who owns the wallet loses the wallet. It's not just. The guy who did nothing walks in, takes the wallet, and goes away. The guy who's totally free of any guilt, he just came and fell asleep, he gets the beating of it. Where is the justice in the world? How is this just?" So he told them, "You have to understand that what happened is very simple. Let's call them Mr. Wallet is Mr. A. The one who ended up with the wallet is Mr. B, and the poor person is Mr. C. So in a previous life, these three gentlemen had met, but the circumstances were like this: that Mr. B had lent money to Mr. A. Okay? Mr. B lent money to Mr. A. Names would make it easier. ABC. I thought ABC is easy. Okay. So, Mr. B lent money to. Now you're confusing me. Yeah. To Mr. A. Right. Okay. All right. So, Mr. A, we said, is the wallet man. Okay. So this wallet man is Mr. A, and there was a Mr. B who had lent him money. Mr. B lent money to Mr. A. They went to the judge. And somehow, Mr. A was able to influence the judge to go in his favor. Yeah? And he never paid. So he told them, this is what happened. What happened is very simple. They all had to come to this world. The person who lost the wallet, that was the money that he owed. Okay? Who did he owe it to? To Mr. B, who was passing by. So he came and he picked up his money that was owed to him in the previous life. The judge was the third guy who had taken the bribe. He got the beating for taking bribes for the judge. He was the third guy who got the beating for no reason. He had more reason to get the beating than anybody else. And justice was done. In our eyes, it's a terrible injustice, every part of it. To lose a wallet is unjust after you work so hard. For somebody to find it for no reason and to take it, it's also not just. It's also not just. And miskin, the guy who got the beating. The guy who got the beating was the judge who was bribed. He deserved the beating. He created the whole scenario for all three of them to have to come back to this world to correct the frauds that they created together. So you see that at the end, everything in the world has its exact position. Everything that looks unjust to us has a high level of justice. If we are the Hachamim that have Ruach HaKodesh and they can see all these people, so they don't have questions. They have all the answers. We only have all the questions. Everything looks unfair to us. Everything doesn't look right. But the person has to know that in the world of Neshamot, there is no limitations of bodies. There is no limitations of generations, of time, of place. Everything is one world. It's a world of where the physical world disappears next to it. And this Maaseh may have happened in another country, in another continent. They'll end up somewhere else. But the circumstances are rectified. The circumstances will come down to the final justice, where everything that belongs to everyone will go to where it belongs, where everybody who does what's right will get what is his, where everybody that does what's wrong will get what they deserve. This is the world of Neshamot. It's a very clear, transparent world, unknown to us, invisible to us, yet a reality that happens every moment of our lives. We see injustices, and we have to understand that it looks unjust to us because we don't know the history. We don't know what happened before, and we don't know what will happen after. But at no time are we in a position with such lack of vision and such lack of understanding to be able to judge HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to say, this is not just. We went through today with children passing away, with tzaddikim, with this. You see, I gave you a sample of every possible injustice that we suffer in life to show you how it is exact justice to the day, to the hour, to the amount of money. If somebody would have counted the money in the wallet, they would have seen that it was exactly the amount that was owed. That was through a fraud of the judge. Everything is to the exact cheshbon that HaKadosh Baruch Hu